Ladies and gentlemen, from the recently finished Endfield technical test, we have seen 9 playable characters that are available. And in this video, I would like to give you a summary of information about each playable character in Endfield tech test. Keep in mind, the information from this video is based on the official information and in-game info from the tech test. And there's chance some elements of the story will be changed upon release. I also have played Endfield test up to the final boss and have taken notes as much as I can. But there might be some things that I missed during the test, so if you know what that is, please let me know in the comment. First, we'll start with how these characters can come together to become playable. Most playable characters in this game, or operators as the game calls it, are mostly employees or partners of Endfield Industries, the main protagonist faction in this game. Just like how Rhodes Island to Arknights, the player character held a high position in this company, and those operators would often do various missions alongside the player character or under their command. And talking about the player character in this game is an individual referred to as the Endministrator, or Endmin for short. You can choose either male or female Endmin. But sadly, the tech test only has one option, and that is the female Endmin. This cutesy little pie that I cannot believe is literally me. And it seems whoever you choose will be canon in the story. And what I mean by that is that the game didn't follow the two-player character existing at the same time idea. There's only one Endministrator, so if you choose female Endmin, the male Endmin won't become a side character or antagonist. He'll be just gone from existence. Okay, so who is this enigmatic Endministrator, who has no animal or mythical creature trait unlike pretty much everyone in the world of Arknights, described as the trump card of Endfield Industries, who has repeatedly used her power and wisdom to lead others to overcome whatever crisis the people encounter and ensure civilization thrives. In the game operator profile, Endfield HR describes Endmin as the company technology expert and protocol administrator, who is proficient with arts and often thinks outside of the box during battles. Endmin also has a unique ability to release and channel energy imbued with originium, and the Endmin can use this ability in many scenarios, from the reconstruction of originium structures, machinery repairs, and combat. The Endmin is essentially a legend. Almost every Endfield employee and some of those outside the company know or heard about her. Many people respected and admired her, but it is said there are also plenty of people who don't like and even fear the Endmin, because the Endmin course of action has them worried about their own fate. This could imply in the past, the Endmin was not afraid to take extreme measures to achieve her goal. And from what I've seen, her presence alone tends to make some people nervous. Some assume that whatever problem they are having is way bigger because the Endmin is simply there being cute. There's also a chance that some people, especially the Endfielders, just misunderstood the Endmin, because there are plenty of exaggerated rumors and legends surrounding her. There even exists an Endfield manual titled How to Deal with Endministrator. It's unknown who the author is or what is the content of that manual. But whatever that is, it led to this guy being nervous around the Endmin. And Chen apparently finds the content unexpected. Well, if it contains the Endmin making instant noodles by shoving the noodles and boiling water straight into her mouth, I bet $10 it's canon and not an exaggeration. We're getting sidetracked here. There's another very interesting thing about the Endministrator. The Endmin is always kept in a long-term hibernation within a cryostasis pod, officially called the Sarcophagus Mark II cryostasis pod, originally designed and jointly maintained by the Endministrator herself and engineers from Rhodes Island Pharmaceutical. There's not a clear reason why the Endmin always needed to be kept in hibernation, but she will be awakened whenever a major crisis hits Endfield or Talos II, and then going back to that cramped place once the crisis subsides. The cryopod that contains the Endmin seems to be placed at Dijiang, or at least sometime before the story of Endfield. I only remembered Dijiang mentioned a couple of times in the story, but it seems to be a spaceship belonging to the Endfield. And in the story of Arknights Endfield, the Endministrator is once again needed. The very first part of the game shows us the cryostasis pod that carries the Endministrator is being transported to Endfield HQ. But due to the information leak, some landbreakers, which are basically raiders and criminals that live outside the civilization band, intercept the transporter, resulting in a crash that severely damaged the pod. And in order to save the Endmin, Perlica is forced to use special means to end the hibernation. But this procedure led to the Endmin having amnesia, and the cryopod is now broken without any backup parts to repair. This seems to also result in the Endmin needing to wear that mask, which is actually her arts inhibitor. And the situation seems to get worse with this mysterious guy telling about a group of armed people that had shown up and is probably after the Endmin. But it seems Endmin and the others don't get into trouble with those people. And there appears to be a way to restore the Endministrator memories. Perlica told us that Rhodes Island, who helped design and maintain the cryopod, can restore the Endmin memories, or at least provide parts to fix the pod. So 42 days after being awakened, the Endmin and Perlica set out to find Rhodes Island Liaison stationed at the hub base, the first area in the game. But after they get there, they are shocked to see the hub base and surrounding area have been attacked and destroyed by a bunch of Angeloi and Blight Rupture. Powers and comms are also down, with the Rhodes Islanders have already left to other areas. In this part of the story, the Endmin and others are tasked to fix and get the base running, find the Rhodes Island Liaison, and uncover the mystery behind the recent incident. We didn't get much to the last two, however, as the main story of the tech test ended right before we met the Rhodes Island Liaison, and pretty much where the mystery gets really interesting. Then let's talk about the next operator, the Endfield poster girl, Perlica, who has a very cool-looking bike, or should I say was. Perlica is a young liberi who acts as the Endfield industry supervisor. From reading her profile, we learn she has 4 years of combat experience. Her date of birth is unknown for whatever reason, and she apparently has artificial originium organs and must undergo routine physical exams. At one point, she rose to the rank of supervisor at a relatively young age, which is no doubt a difficult task and makes people doubt this young bird. But her leadership and achievements eventually dispel any doubt. In one of her conversations in the story, she said she has lived many years in the frontier. I'm just assuming, but from how she talks about it, it could imply she was born in the frontier, or at least has been there since she was little. From the game test or official media, we can tell that Perlica is close with the Endmin. Even throughout the main story, she often expresses her concern about the Endmin well-being, and she most likely has witnessed the Endmin several times in the past. And by reading her profile, turns out she was taken in and mentored by the Endministrator herself. And from the looks of it, Perlica is the one in charge of Endmin's recovery. Perlica is essentially a manager, but she often spends most of her time on the front line, and often has to move from base to base doing whatever she can to keep things organized and running. For combat, she preferred to use her originium arts and wield a staff. I don't remember there's anything particularly unique about her arts. However, her arts is possibly quite strong, especially after seeing her one-shot the final boss, after whatever the Endmin did to it. But I also got plenty of questions about this scene. First, why the laser beam came out from her. Futuristic watch, I guess. I don't remember there's mention of it being an arts unit, and no one in the story really talks about it after that. Or could this be the Endmin's doing? Well, if you know or have speculation, let me know in the comment. Aside from her arts, as a high-ranking member of Endfield, she can command other Endfield operators and has access to use teleportation tech to relay combat directives to Dijiang and launch precision strikes at her target. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's her ultimate. In the field, people regard her as a disciplined yet amiable and cool-headed leader. She is without a doubt very popular among Endfield employees. Many people are looking forward to working in her team, as this usually involves generous bonuses, plenty of leave days, and a chance to learn something new. Truly a dream boss. But it's sad to know she rarely can give herself a vacation. In her dialogue, she said she always wanted to go to the south, to the civilization band or other places to get some vacation. But accidents and more work always get in the way. Now let's see the next operator, and that is Chen Qianyu. If you play Arknights, you might be very interested in her since she carries Chen's name, and they do look alike. Well, turns out she is indeed related to Chen in Arknights. Specifically, she is Chen's descendant. And turns out, Chen has become some sort of a legend amongst the family. And Qianyu views her as a role model. Qianyu is an easygoing lung with 8 years of combat experience who joined Endfield through Perlica's recommendation and is said to be her personal security detail. She is the third operator we get who came to help Endmin and Perlica right after the incident at the hub base has been reported, and stay with the team until the tech test final boss. True to her profile, she is an excellent combatant who is happy to spar with others and share advice. But due to her background and training, she rarely gets anything useful from others, and people also hardly get any practical tips from her. Nevertheless, she was apparently voted as the best buddy to have in the field by fellow Endfielders. Wielding 2 swords and dedicated herself to many martial arts in the region, as well as her family's sword art. Her signature weapon is interestingly called Chen's Blade. Whether this is a family heirloom that perhaps was used by Chen from Arknights, or just the sword she has, it's not certain. When off duty, she would spend most of her time on self-improvement, waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and doing 8 hours of extensive training, with hardly any bruises or exhaustion, and often say her performance is not enough. Despite for the Endfield standard, she is considered exemplary. Wulfgard shared his comment about her, saying he only ever read such character in a fictional novel. Then let's see the next operator, Catello Wulfgard. Wulfgard is a Lupo with 7 years of combat experience, who joined Endfield under Perlica's recommendation. When Wulfgard joined Endfield, it raised quite a controversy, because he was once a member of a landbreaker called the Pack, who has roaming the wilderness for years. We don't know much about this group, but Wulfgard once infiltrated Endfield HQ for a reason we also do not know, and even attempted to abduct Perlica. It's not clear what happened after that, but Perlica shockingly invited Wulfgard to join Endfield, and her reason is also quite simple, saying she believes in Wulfgard's ability and thinks it will be a worthy investment, and it seems her decision actually paid off. Wulfgard proved to be a dependable operator, not only because he is quite skilled in combat with his 2-handed sword, but his experience roaming the wilderness and his previous relation with the landbreaker makes Wulfgard a capable candidate if you need someone who knows how to negotiate with people living on the frontier and how to handle landbreaker. And for better or worse, he's not really the social type. In fact, many Endfielders do not know who this guy is. And Wulfgard himself commented it's better he doesn't get much spotlight because it is safer that way. Because of his nature, he's an excellent operator to do a solo mission, especially for recon. He's not essentially bad at teamwork, but there might be some adjustments if he's on the team. In fact, in his profile, he is considered easy to get along with, as long as you don't get too clingy. In the main story, he's the 4th operator to join the Endmin's team. He was initially on a mission to investigate the aircraft crash that carries Endmin, but after knowing the hub base got issues with landbreakers who stole their supplies, Perlica ordered Wulfgard to come and help her team. He then helped the Endmin's team throughout the main story, sharing some trivia about landbreakers and people who live on the frontier along the way. He eventually decided to split with the group after the fight with the game's first boss, Cliff. in order to find out more clues about the landbreakers near the hub base and about Cliff. Moving on, we'll talk about the first healer and defender we should get in this game, and his name is Fjall, nicknamed the Surgeon. Fjall is another Lupo with 8 years of combat experience. Before joining Endfield, he was once a knight in the Order of Steel Oath. Last time I checked, and dear God, don't let me be wrong, there's hardly any mention of this organization in the tech test. One thing for sure is that the Order of Steel Oath is a military organization that seems to be involved a lot in Angeloi extermination. Anyway, Fjall was referred to as the legendary Beast Slayer when he was still serving the Order. But he has grown tired of endless battle and then chooses to leave the Order and return to Civilization Band and take up the medical profession. At one point, he joined Endfield Industries to become a field surgeon, and was the only operator in the test who was recommended by Rhodes Island, specifically their medical department, to join Endfield. Thanks to his extensive experience in frontier survival, excellent combat skills, and medical knowledge. He's a valuable operator, and Endfielders feel lucky to have him by their side. If there's ever someone who got severely injured, they tend to have a higher chance of survival if treated by the surgeon. His reliability led to a certain team captain trying to recruit Fjall to his team. Interestingly enough, it's for an assault position. Well, as I have mentioned earlier, this guy also has excellent combat skills, and many instructors have noted that Fjall would subconsciously restrain himself when fighting using his one-handed weapon. However, Fjall also carries a unique battle axe, the one you see when he uses his skill and pursuit attack. He said he has wielded the axe for many years and treats it as some sort of comrade. And when he uses it, he will no longer restrain himself in combat. An instructor tells about how Fjall would be more proficient if he dual-wielded the axe, and the current is always trying to keep his impulse and rage in check. In reply, Fjall doesn't deny any of what that instructor said, because as a field surgeon, his primary concern is the well-being of his team, and to give them medical aid. And by the way, although there's no mention of his health in his profile, but by the looks of that crystal on his forehead, he seems to be an infected. In the main story, Fjall joined the Endmin's team sometime after Wulfgard split up, acting as his replacement and medical personnel. As in this part of the story, we'll see plenty of injured people because of the recent mysterious attack. He fights alongside the Endmin's team up until the team encounters several injured and infected workers that could really use his help. Now, let's talk about Angelina, a hot topic amongst Arknights players. She has the same name, same race, same ability, and is affiliated with Rhodes Island, just like Angie from Arknights. People initially thought this is her in the future, but it doesn't make sense, since it is implied Endfield is quite in the distant future from Arknights' timeline. Angie, as far as we know, doesn't come from a long-living race, and if she does, she should have looked older. Luckily, this question is somewhat answered in the test. If you look at her basic info, it's just not the same with Angie and Arknights. There's a difference in her birth date, height, and her combat experience is unknown for some reason. But the most shocking of all is that she has no oropathy, despite Angie and Arknights contracting it. And we know that oropathy in Endfield is still incurable. By reading her profile, we learn some very interesting things. In the very first word, the file said the original Angie had applied for the Hetero Core project and has left a letter for her future self that would travel the world of Talos II, and that sometime later in the future. Angelina in Talos has undergone mental and physical tests and memory tests, and only after that she was allowed to start working as a catastrophe messenger in Talos II. And it is said, this Angelina is curious about her other self, and often calls Angie from Arknights as her senpai. So what does this mean? Who is this Angelina in Endfield? Well, from what we have right now, the best thing we can assume is this Angelina is some sort of clone of Angie from Arknights. And despite being not the original Angelina, She still has and mastered the extremely rare gravity aspects of Originium that she often uses for combat and helping the R&D team, and still has pretty much the same sunny and optimistic personality as the original Angie, which makes Warfarin, most definitely Warfarin from Arknights, feels nostalgic about the past. Anyway, the current Angelina is a Rhodes Island operator dispatched to Endfield. She is the Rhodes Island liaison we are looking for in the Endfield main story, who initially came to the hub base with 2 other Rhodes Islanders. But after the recent incident, she got some mysterious signal that led to the final boss area. She then rushed to investigate it for a reason we do not know yet. After defeating the final boss, the team eventually manages to establish a connection with her, and from this short conversation, we learn that Angelina knew Endmin in the past. Whether this means she knew Endmin during the previous crisis, or perhaps when Endmin was using a different name. It's not certain. Now let's talk about Avywenna, or Avy for short. Worth noting that Avy and the next 2 operators don't take any part in the main story, or at least not yet. And if I'm not mistaken, they are also not present in any side activity. Anyway, Avy is a Caudus with 6 years of combat experience and is the only polearm user during the test. She is a seasoned and well-known armed messenger who often goes back and forth between Civilization Band and the Frontier, who at one point joined Endfield with recommendations of the company's longtime headhunting partner. There's not much interesting to tell about her. She's an expert at combat and traveling the wilderness of the Frontier. Because of her reputation and attitude, fellow Enfielders initially thought she is all about business and would only accept work from major corporations at a high rate. But turns out she has accepted quite a number of contracts from non-corporate individuals at a low rate or even free. In fact, she worked for Endfield at a more reasonable price than what you would expect someone to ask from an interplanetary construction company. Her reason for doing that is unknown, but from her dialogue, I assume Endmin has something to do with that. Moving on, let's see Azrilla the Ember, a Sancta with 12 years of combat experience, the longest among other operators in the test. And gotta say, I really didn't expect a Sancta to carry those heavy loadouts. Anyway, she was once a knight in the Order of Steel Oath, much like Fjall, but they don't seem to have any interaction. It's not clear why she decided to leave the Order, but there seems to be a lot of regret in her reason. In one of her idle voice lines, she also talks about a woman named Nehemia, simply saying it is not the time for Ember to meet her, with a rather sorrowful voice. We don't know who this Nehemia is, but seeing how Ember left a certain organization and mentioned this certain individual kind of reminds me of Saria and Ifrit. After leaving the Order, she spent some time traveling the wilderness alongside Xaihi, until they eventually join Endfield under, interestingly, Endmin's recommendation. I find Ember and Xaihi duo interesting because Ember is a Sancta and Xaihi is a Sarkaz. Definitely not 2 races you expect to get along. But then again, there are cases of Sancta and Sarkaz tolerating each other in Arknights. And interestingly, there's nothing in their profile pointing to this Sarkaz-Sancta duo. This could imply in the world of Endfield, there's no longer Sancta and Sarkaz rivalry, or at least they have tolerate each other more. At any rate, thanks to her time serving the Order, Ember is an excellent combatant, able to work both alone and in a team. Especially when it comes to fighting the Angoloi, she's the gal you'll need. Even in her profile, she is believed to be able to beat 600 minor Angoloi in just 3 days, all by herself. But Ember also exhibits a rather strange mental state. Medical department stated that Ember seems to suffer from dyschronometria. That makes her unable to accurately estimate the amount of time that has passed. Even in one conversation with Xaihi, when Ember asked about how long it will take them to get to the nearest Endfield outpost. Xaihi replies it would take them 3 days, but shortly says in a word that Ember better understands. saying it would take about the amount of time Ember need to terminate 600 minor Angeloi. But interestingly, this time blindness only happens outside of combat scenarios. The last operator on the list is Xaihi, a calm, gentle young Sarkaz who has immense knowledge of technology and has 2 years of combat experience, the lowest among others in the test, excluding those who are unknown. And at one point she joined Endfield at the same time as Ember, under Endmin's recommendation. Very few know about her past, but there are plenty of people who like to know her background with how knowledgeable she is. However, higher-ups discouraged people from pushing the lady too much on the matter because of privacy. But there are rumors that Xaihi came from an isolated and mysterious place, where people have an odd reverence for technology. Well, she does dresses and talks like some sort of priestess, and has an immense knowledge of technology. But some also said the way she talks and acts is hardly typical of someone who grew up in a cloister, and would sometimes blurt out unexpected things. Nevertheless, she proved to be a valuable operator in Endfield. With her immense knowledge of technology, many complicated issues were only solved when she worked on them. But when asked by the engineers how she managed to do it, she just says some simple words like, "It's just the way it is," and other strange things, which led to some Endfielders' jokes about this. With her expertise, one might wonder how she can become an operator who goes on a field mission. Well, turns out Xaihi has some prior experience traveling the wilderness, even before meeting Ember, and she seems quite capable in combat using her originium arts. She's also eager to go out and experience a different lifestyle, which also includes the life of a frontline soldier. So she became a field operator, though we don't know how frequently she goes out. And apparently, she has requested a special arts unit from Endfield engineers. That could resonate with her arts and help her during combat. But it is advised to not let Xaihi do a solo mission, because she appears to lack common sense. Well, fellas, that's all the story summary of each operator in Endfield Tech Test. Let me know what you think about them. That should be all. Adios.